Happy Cancer season. Today we're going to be mixing together Lunar Tide's Moonstone with their Amethyst. So to start, my swatches are labeled 1 through 11 today, but that is not synonymous with hair levels. I do pictures and clips near the end of the video, so the numbers just help us keep track of each swatch. 1 is a gray, 2 is a natural red, 3 is black, and then from 3 to 10, we have a range that goes to a platinum blonde, and then number 11 is like a more toned version of number 10. Also, these are human hair swatches, but the only one that is virgin hair is the number 3 black swatch. The rest have been chemically dyed or bleached at some point in their existence. This is kind of unintentional, but the nail polish that I'm wearing is actually a Cancer nail polish. Lolly Polish has a zodiac collection. I considered getting some of the astrology ones, but I didn't. And then they were doing a little promotion where you get one for free, and the free one was Cancer, which, it's so pretty. I don't know if you guys can actually even see the colors, so if not, I'll do a close-up later in the video. Both Moonstone and Amethyst are not super dark dyes, so I don't really know if it's going to dye the darker to lighter brown swatches, but that's what my channel is about. I do it anyways. But our first mixture is going to be a 4-to-1 ratio, and that will be 4 parts of Moonstone to a 1 part Amethyst. So if you didn't already know, Cancer season usually starts around June 20th to July 21st. The cool thing about the cardinal signs, which I believe is Aries, Cancer, Libra, and Capricorn, they all start off the next season. So Cancer starts off the summer season, so it's usually on the summer solstice. If you're someone who was born around June 20th or July 21st and you're not really sure what your sun sign is, you can go to a website like astro.com. As long as you have your birth time, you can get a birth chart or natal chart made, and it will tell you what your sun sign is. Astrology relies kind of heavily on degrees, and I won't get into that, but the reason I say that is because it's not considered an astrological season until the sun enters 1 degree into a sign. So for example, this year I believe Cancer season started around 7:40 a.m. Central Standard Time, my time. So if you were born, say 1 a.m. this year, you are technically a Gemini. So 2 people can be born on the same day, but depending on the time, it can determine whether or not you are one sign or another. For the other part, I'm going to do equal parts. So that is the same amount of Moonstone as Amethyst. For each sign, I did also want to touch on the reason why I chose the colors that I did. And I did try to go with more traditional color palettes for each sign. So Cancer is a water sign, and Cancer is ruled by the moon. I think because of the moon, Cancer is often associated with colors of silvers and grays. So for this mix, I actually wanted to combine the element of water and the color of the moon to make a more cool-toned bluey purple. Now, I know Lunar Tides has a color called Periwinkle, which might be similar. In the future, when I do Periwinkle, I will definitely compare these. But I was extra excited to be able to use the Moonstone color for this mix, considering Cancer is ruled by the moon. Even though on the Lunar Tides website, Moonstone looks a little bit more cool-toned, for me, it turned out a little bit, not super greenish blue, but not as cool-toned as I hoped. So that is another reason why I got inspired to mix the Amethyst into the Moonstone, hoping to cool it down even just a little bit. I also wanted to do a larger difference between the top and bottom mixture. So the top, again, was a 4-to-1 ratio. So that is just a little bit of Amethyst in the blue. So you keep a lot of that blue tone in the color, and you'll get a lot more of the purple showing through on the ends here. I did mix together and swatch a 2-to-1 ratio, but it was very similar to the equal parts. It did lean a little bit more blue, but it wasn't quite different enough for me to do it. If you want something that's in between the top and bottom mix that I did, 2-to-1 ratio, where it's 2 parts Moonstone and 1 part Amethyst, it'll probably get you the color that you're looking for. So I'm going to let these sit for about 3 hours. I will then rinse those out, and when they're dry, I will meet you back here and we'll do some comparisons. Okay, so like I said, I wasn't really expecting these ones to take much dye, but I do feel like on the number 8, the bottom half, it does look a little bit more toned. Same with number 7. It almost has like a neutralized look to it. And then the tops of 6, 7, and 8 have a slightly green look, I think because of the blue. I'm gonna be honest with you. The ones that are actually the color that I was thinking of are the number 1, which was gray beforehand, and the number 11, which was like toned beforehand. The number 1 is actually much closer to what I was picturing. This, actually both, are exactly what I was hoping to happen, and the number 11 is very close, so I really like those as well. So I would say whether you're using this mix or just like Moonstone, for example, by itself, and you want it to look more cool toned and avoid that like slightly greenish blue look, you would definitely want to probably at least tone your hair before using these colors. The number 10 is pretty, don't get me wrong, it's just not quite as cool tone as I was hoping it would look, but definitely the bottom with even more amethyst, well, the equal parts, is much more cool tone in comparison to the top. But I feel like on the number 1 gray and the number 11, this part almost looks like Periwinkle. I don't really have too much to say on that. I think it's pretty self-explanatory. So I want to jump into the comparisons, and of course we're going to start with the Lunar Tides Moonstone. So this is comparable to number 11. This is comparable to number 10. And this is comparable to number 9. So on the Lunar Tides website, it has a picture of Moonstone, and to me, I mean, everyone's hair is different, of course, so maybe on your hair it would turn out more cool toned, but I was expecting it to actually look more, actually really like either of these, but even on the number 12, it definitely looks a lot more greenish blue, like a little more warm toned. I don't know why this number 10 swatch for the Platinum Blonde is really, really thin, so I'm going to try and squeeze the hair together so you can see more of that pigment. Now the only thing with like cooler tones is that they don't reflect light as nicely as warm tones, so the mix as well as the 1 and 11 almost look like they're a little bit darker, but I think that's truly just because the purple makes it a little more cool toned, so it doesn't reflect as well. Whereas realistically, they're probably close to the same lightness. Like for both Moonstone and the mix, you're gonna want very, very light hair before dyeing. As for cooler tone blues, I really don't have a ton. So our next comparison will be Arctic Fox in the color Periwinkle. This is comparable to number 11. This is comparable to number 10. And this is comparable to number 9. So before I get too into it, Periwinkle is one of those colors that the outcome will very much depend on your hair. I've had people tell me that it looks way more pigmented and blue on their hair than it turned out on my swatches. And then I've also heard other people say it didn't take in their hair at all. Because of that, I have considered redoing the video to see if it turns out any different. But I will say on my hair, which I do actually have it in my hair right now, it fades very quickly, but it turned out almost exactly like the number 9. Well, maybe in between 8 and 9, because mine wasn't toned, but it bleached pretty light because it was already bleached previously, which it's not my whole head, by the way. It's just a strip. But either way, mine turned out like pretty much just like those. So it's really hard to say what it would look like on your hair. But again, I am willing to redo the video if you want, because I also did 2 separate diluted parts back in the day, whereas now I just do 1 diluted part and the top, so feel free to let me know. I am going to cover up the diluted section so it's a little less distracting, but Periwinkle is definitely even more cool toned, at least compared to the top part with more Moonstone. And actually, to me, the Moonstone mixed with Amethyst kind of looks how I picture Poseidon and Periwinkle looking if they were mixed. But I haven't done that video on my channel yet, so feel free to always leave requests below if that's a color you're curious about seeing. And of course, if I do that, well, eventually I will do it, but when I do that, I will probably compare that mix to this mix if you guys want. All right, and then I definitely wanted to move them down since the bottom half of these swatches are much more cool toned. I definitely feel like that looks so much more similar, but it does kind of seem to me like the mix between Moonstone and Amethyst might be a little bit more pigmented just based off of how it took on the number 9 swatch versus the number 7 swatch. So if your hair struggles to take Periwinkle, maybe doing equal parts of Moonstone and Amethyst gets you a better result. Maybe light blues and light purples can be really hard for hair to take sometimes, so I won't guarantee it, but it does seem slightly more pigmented than Periwinkle. But as you can see, even with Periwinkle being a very cool toned, like bluish purple color, toning the hair first definitely gets you a much more true to color look, in my opinion. Based off of the swatches I've seen, I think this is what Periwinkle is more supposed to look like, but even on the blonde one, it's slightly more warm toned than the toned swatch. So from here, we're gonna get into the before and after clips. Those, as well as anything near the end of this video, will all be done in natural lighting. I do have to film these on different days, and since I'm using natural lighting, sometimes the before and afters can look slightly off, and if that is the case, the lighting is probably why. I hope this video helped. If you have a request, I do have a link below to a Google form you can fill out, but just remember, I only do dyes that do not test on animals. Thank you so much to my patrons, and thank you so much for watching, and I hope to see you in my next video.